Hey, here are 5 stupid things I've noticed about the war on drugs. It's expensive. A 2008 Harvard study found that legalizing drugs would save American taxpayers $44 billion annually in saved law enforcement costs alone. And when you add to that the billions spent every year of both public and private dollars on education and prevention programs, then this starts to become a pretty costly project. And I'm not even saying that all of those dollars are misspent. The amount of money isn't really the problem. The problem is that despite how much we spend on it, the United States' war on drugs has been a failure by virtually every standard you could possibly appeal to. And there are many reasons for this. For example, it's wasted years worrying about the wrong drugs. From 1998 to 2006, the federal government spent nearly $1.5 billion on a media campaign designed to discourage young people from using marijuana. It didn't work. A congressionally sponsored survey conducted of the anti-marijuana campaign from 2000 to 2004 found that although the campaign had reached 94% of its target audience, it did absolutely nothing to decrease the rate of marijuana use. In fact, the more someone was exposed to the campaign, the more willing they were to try marijuana. The boomerang effect. Worst of all, while all this attention was being paid to a relatively harmless drug, rates of prescription medication abuse were on the rise, as were rates of abuse of methamphetamine, a highly addictive drug capable of inflicting severe physical and psychological damage on those who develop a habit. But on the positive side, at least it gets you off the couch. It punishes the wrong people. As a general rule, I'm all for prosecuting drug traffickers and dealers and throwing away the key. There's something about profiting off of the poor judgment of others that just rubs me wrong. I don't know. But drug laws target users as well as pushers, and often the aftermath of a drug conviction can be just as bad as the aftermath of the drug abuse itself. A history of addiction and a criminal record don't look too appealing on a resume, it turns out. It focuses too much on law enforcement and too little on public health. From the federal government on down to the local level, the success of anti-drug programs is often measured in arrests or in tonnage of drugs taken off the street. Busts and arrests make for reassuring headlines, but the thing is, drug abuse isn't just a criminal problem, it's also a public health problem, and yet rehabilitation and prevention programs are often shortchanged in favor of law enforcement programs, even though there have been repeated findings that prevention and rehabilitation is not only cheaper, but far more effective in the long run. But this is America, and here in America, we like our outcomes immediate and visible, if you please. And damn, those headlines look good, don't they? Unfortunately, those headlines are also indicative of something else about the war on drugs. It's racist. Drug users break down along racial lines the same way as the general population does. Black Americans account for about 13% of the U.S. general population, and they also account for about 13% of the drug users. But they also account for nearly 3/4 of the people incarcerated for drug-related crimes. And that's not all. Federal penalties for possession of crack cocaine, which is cheaper and statistically speaking more widely used in impoverished, predominantly black neighborhoods, are far stiffer than the federal penalties for possession of far greater amounts of powdered cocaine. And that's after President Obama signed into law in 2010 the Fair Sentencing Act, which dramatically reduced the disparity between penalties for crack possession versus penalties for powdered cocaine possession. Maybe worst of all, the racial disparities of the war on drugs result in self-perpetuating destructive cycles, both in families dependent on incarcerated parents being doomed to further poverty, and also in law enforcement agencies being encouraged to continue to disproportionately target predominantly black communities for their drug enforcement operations. Look, drugs are a serious problem and a complicated one, and I don't think there is a simple solution, but it's very difficult to look at the facts and not come away with the conclusion that the war on drugs has been at least as destructive as the drugs themselves. And on that painfully obvious note, the hardest part is only picking 5. Catch you next time.